Hey there, Terry here. Just a quick announcement that if you like giving voice to depression, you might also like my new podcast, Recoverable. On it, I will be asking experts the top 10 most searched questions about different addictions and mental health conditions and therapies. Look for Recoverable wherever you get your podcasts. Hello and welcome to the Giving Voice to Depression podcast, brought to you by Recovery.com, the best place to find mental health and addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere.
Each week, we profile a guest who shares openly about their mental health journey. They share because they understand that when people don't talk about their depression or other mental health conditions, those of us who do struggle with them can feel like we're the only ones, that there's something wrong with us, and that no one understands. We understand.
I'm Terry McGuire, the creator and co-host of this podcast. You have my promise that we'll keep it real here. Depression is real, and we're not going to sugarcoat our discussions about it.
Hope is also real, and you'll get a dose of that here too. I'm Carly McCullough, a licensed social worker and educator, and Terry's daughter. We've both experienced depression and also support loved ones struggling with it. We're here to normalize talking about depression and mental health in our communities, as well as our families.
And to share real-world tested strategies that have worked for other people who have walked similar paths. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Mom. So what does your depression look like? Is it the trudging through life variety where everything feels heavy and disconnected from you? Or are popping out of bed or jumping in the shower insurmountable tasks, despite how simple they sound or used to be? Or do you work overtime to prove you're fine and repeatedly tell yourself you're just tired because there is no way you have a mental illness because you have too many blessings or way too much on your plate?
Today we continue our discussion with psychologist Dr. Margaret Rutherford about 10 reasons the denial of depression can be so strong. Why lowering the mask can be scary, yet how doing so can help us heal.
If you've ever felt like you're failing your faith, your family, or yourself because you're struggling, then this conversation is for you. Here again is Dr. Margaret, giving her voice to depression.
Okay, another reason denial of depression can be so strong is non-acknowledgement of the difficulty of its context or reason.
Mm-hmm. Because what's happening is that people stay away from thinking about, I don't want to call myself, I didn't go through trauma. Let's not be overly dramatic and exaggerate. And people discount what's happened to them. I should be able to handle that. In my own life, I was in an abusive relationship and I got, it was pretty bad. And I wanted to think, I'm not going to call this traumatic. This isn't traumatic. This is just, it's this tendency to see things as I should be able to handle this rather than, wow, would I tell somebody else that they should be able to handle this all by themselves? Perhaps not. And then again, this can be started at an early age. You think you have a reason to cry. I'll give you something to cry about. You're saying this is a real difficulty when it just seems to me like it's a normal part of life. Well, difficulties are normal parts of life, but that doesn't mean they're not hard. And it doesn't mean that you can't run out of gas to handle them.
It took me a long time to understand that it isn't necessarily what happened, which you can say, well, it wasn't that bad, but how it impacted you. And that you can't argue with.
Exactly. And of course, when you've had previous trauma in your life, often you will tend to get PTSD faster than someone else will.
Your fourth reason is I have too many blessings to be depressed.
No, one of my favorites.
That one I know. We tell ourselves and other people, let us know if we don't.
Oh, yeah. Keep that gratitude list going, right? Which is nothing wrong with a gratitude list in and of itself. But fancy psychological term for this is toxic positivity. And where people get stuck is to think, well, because I have blessings, I should not even allow myself to think of anything that could be wrong. Well, again, especially with my focus on perfectly hidden depression, that actually can kill you, because you can be so much in denial about the level of pain you're carrying around because you have this successful seeming life that you don't understand how the pain is growing more and more potent, and it's actually taking over, and you're more at risk for suicide. So that is a huge factor.
I think of parents and partners hearing of someone being depressed, showing symptoms of depression, and wanting to say, I give you so much, I do so much for you, doing my best. How could you possibly not be happy? As if.
Right. Oh, goodness. Well, that's definitely something that, you're making that child's pain or that partner's pain about the quality of what you've offered them. So you can't be depressed or you can't be struggling because that means I failed. And that kind of connection is really not rational.
No, nor is it acknowledging depression as a medical condition, because you would hate them if they had asthma or anything else. It's like, how dare you have trouble breathing? Yeah. I provided so much air. Yeah.
Wow. Oof.
Okay. Another reason you have listed as why the denial of depression can be so strong is fear of depression. Maybe family members or friends have died by suicide or didn't get better.
Right. What if you have a mom, she was depressed and she talked about being depressed all the time and she didn't do for you and that kind of thing? I think that, you can fear being her so much that when then your own either genetic inheritance or whatever tendencies you may fall on the side of having to struggle some with depression, you don't want to see it. And so they explain it away or they shame themselves for having it, when actually the research shows that if you have a family member that dies by suicide, it raises the chance that you would have those thoughts or that would be an option for you. But you're not locked into that by any stretch of the imagination, but you have to accept that those are your tendencies.
Another reason you listed, implosion of depression itself, the way that it drains our energy spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
I call depression implosion of the self, which means think of a little black hole in your chest, and all of a sudden your energy is just getting pulled into that black hole. It's like, and the work of someone who's depressed is that you've got to, and it's hard to do, you've got to get that energy moving outward again, where you get connected with other people, with other interests, with other activity, with other decisions, whatever it is you're staying away from, you're trying to reconnect with that. And it's hard work because even what you notice, even your senses get less attuned to what's around you. When I know somebody's getting better, they'll come into my office and they'll say something like, have you always had that artwork? Has that always been there? Yeah. It's because that kind of implosion is beginning to lessen and they're beginning to open themselves up cautiously sometimes, but quietly or gently into the things in their world that can bring them comfort or joy or just a sense of connection.
Mm-hmm. I appreciated when I read this point that you said spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical energy drain, because it's easy to just think it's harder to get out of bed. It's harder to get through a day, but it's all of it.
All of it. Yeah. That's why it's so demoralizing, because there's really nothing that's working.
Yes.
And you know what? That's why therapy can be helpful, because at least I believe the job of a therapist is to hold a very empathic, safe space for somebody and relationship in which to say, I just don't know who I am anymore, or I've lost my way. How can I understand that? And we can talk about it where they're not having to put up a front and they're not having to pretend they don't feel that way. And it may be on that list, but people are afraid they're going to feeling sorry for themselves. Oh, I'm just feeling sorry for myself. Well,
It is on the list.
Yeah, I thought it was probably.
It's your list.
Because I hear it all the time. I feel like I'm just feeling sorry for myself. Actually what I do in those instances, I say, well, are you? Most of us have felt that way at some point. And how is this different, or how is it the same? But typically, if you're asking yourself that question, it's not self-pity, because people who have a lot of self-pity don't have enough awareness. There, Kim, good word, to actually realize that they're being self-pitying.
Interesting. Here's the one that surprised me. Can't afford to be depressed.
Think of caregivers. Think of nurses. Think of medical professionals. Think of mothers.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't afford to take the time out you're telling me I need to take. It was even hard for me to find the time to come to this session. I mean, I got to stay busy. That's who I am. That's my value. I just got to tread water until I feel like I say, so you're going to tread water for another 6 months. Okay, imagine yourself out in the lake. You're in the middle of the lake. You're treading water for 6 months. And then you expect yourself to have the energy to swim ashore? Really? Where are you going to get that? And my message is, in most cases, unless you decide that something can take up less room or become less of a priority, at least for a little while, so you can begin to pay attention to yourself, it's just going to be like you're treading that water.
And we don't want to make that big a deal out of it, or who will take care of the kids. There are always a lot of things on the list of why I can't.
Right. And I respect those. I mean, I've got to make a living. Get it. It's not that those are inconsequential at all, but they can be barriers. So I'm just going to ignore my depression and, I'm not even going to call it depression. In fact, I'm not even going to come back. And so, with those people, you need to give them a lot of freedom to make choices and not feel like I'm going to tell you what to do with your life, because they'll balk and they'll leave. Yeah, it's a little tricky to help people like that.
Another reason people deny depression is stigma.
This happens to weak people. It doesn't happen to me. It's similar. All these are kind of, interrelated. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, when I moved here, I actually had people say to me that, they thought depression was of the devil, and it was a sickness, and it was, something that you should be ashamed of having. And if your faith was stronger, if you followed this faith and not another one, then, that would be the difference. So I think the true answer to that is deciding, I have to value what I am feeling and what I'm experiencing. And I want to say to myself exactly what I'd say to my child or my friend or my partner, and have the same kind of compassion. You can work on depression and not fall apart. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to fall apart, and we can have a fall apart plan. But if you go slowly enough and gently enough, then, you can make changes that are substantial.
Nice. So we can sit here and say, like, stigma bad, and we both agree stigma's bad and that it's dangerous. It's also a legitimate concern that if you tell people, if you say, I think I have a mental illness, that could affect your relationships, could affect your career.
Yeah.
So how does somebody, when they're feeling really unresourced and really on themselves, say, I'm going to do what's right for me and get some help?
We're trying to make changes as a world, but I feel for the person who says, I just can't talk about it because there's too much stigma. I speak to construction workers all the time because they have a very high suicide rate. And their zeitgeist is don't, shut up and get the work done, and don't talk about how hard a time you're having with a divorce, or, how you go home and drink too much, or how you can't sleep and you sleep 2 hours a night. I'm not going to tell anybody that because they'll say, well, you shouldn't be working out here if you're acting that way. So they hide it. You tell someone you trust, and then let that someone help you get help. And most companies now, certainly construction companies, are beginning to have people who are embedded in their organization that will hear these kinds of things and not go, well, you're fired, but let us help you.
The last one on your list of reasons somebody might deny depression: lack of support from family or relationships.
We look often for people who are like us. And two people will get together who they don't want conflict. And so they do everything they can avoid conflict, or neither one of them knows how to do emotional intimacy. So they don't do emotional intimacy, and they're quote unquote happy, but unfortunately somebody gets angry or one of them gets depressed, especially if it's an agitated depression, or then they don't have a language that they've already developed to talk about that and to say, I'm struggling. No, we don't struggle in this family. What are you talking about? You're struggling. And so you have to look at, what did I grow up in that would prevent me from saying, I need to have these kinds of conversations. It is good for me to talk about being angry or disappointed or afraid or sad. I want to build that kind of family around myself. I want to have that in my friends. But sadly, a lot of people do not.
Yeah, a whole lot of them. So that is the end of your list. But is there something in looking back on this whole thing and the reason you wrote it in the first place, that if somebody's been listening for what will be 2 weeks here, that you want to sort of end with?
People often ask me if I have depression myself or perfectly hidden depression myself, because that's what I was writing about. But the person that comes to mind is my mother. My mother was beautiful, and she was smart, and she was talented, and she could claim none of those. She did not think well of herself. She used things to kind of buoy her. She was the thinnest of her friends. She threw the best party, blah, 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 blah. Well, in her 30s, she developed panic and I think depression. And what the doctors back then in the 1950s and 60s did is to say, well, take this pill. And so my mother never darkened the door of a therapist. In fact, I was her therapist. That's probably why I am a therapist. That was not appropriate, by the way. But she also became a prescription drug addict. And I watched those pills destroy her. We all did. I guess my dad didn't want to know or something. It wasn't until I got into graduate school and took my first psychopharm class that I realized what she was taking, and they were major tranquilizers. I mean, the fact that she could walk around, but she looked fine. But denying what's really underneath the problem and never addressing it is a very dangerous thing to do. Especially if you use pot or scrolling or alcohol or work or whatever it is, pouring yourself into your children to somehow deny what's really going on internally. And I just don't want that to happen. If I can have any influence over one or two people deciding, well, maybe I don't want to be like Margaret's mother. And that's what I would encourage people to try to do. Asking for help is not a failure. Asking for help is a sign of determination. It's a sign of determination that you are going to get to the bottom of something and try to make a positive change in yourself. I've asked for lots of help, and I will continue to ask for help. And I encourage other people to try to see asking for help as that.
Mom, how lucky are we that Dr. Margaret is a part of the Giving Voice community?
Right? She just has such good points to make, and I love the way she makes them. And that she's willing to be so personal, too. Share about herself, share about her mother. That really makes a difference when you can feel, disconnected and maybe even beneath a little bit a psychologist or a therapist. It's like they've got it together and somehow I don't. But mental health is everybody's issue.
And I think she also makes a beautiful point that sometimes the things we've lived through actually lead us to careers in mental health, that we want to make a difference or we want to break some pattern. So, man, there were a couple of things that she said that really stuck out to me.
Let's hear them.
The belief that depression happens to weak people.
it can be hard not to think that.
Yeah. I've had some folks who work in schools, especially around attendance or lateness, talk a lot about your alarm goes off, you get out of bed. How hard is this? You just got to set your alarm, and then you got to, when it goes off, you got to get out of bed. And I have often suggested that perhaps getting out of bed is not as simple as it is for that person. And especially because we know that there can be really strong correlations between hormones and depression when we're talking about teenagers in particular. There's a lot of hormonal changes going on, obviously. And so, sometimes it's you stayed up too late and you don't want to wake up to your alarm. Sometimes it's, I have that math test first period and I don't want to be there. And more than 0% of the time, it's going to be depression too.
That was very tactfully put. More than 0% of the time.
What's your self-talk like when your depression flares, Mom? Do you sort of think of yourself as weak or like, why can't I just push through? Or why can't I do this? Or, what is your sort of inner monologue like?
I think, and I didn't know you were going to ask that. So I think that in milder, like episodic depressions, that's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, come on, Terry. It's not that bad. You can do this. When it was really bad, I think that the thing I most often said to myself was, like, this can't be how my story ends. I remember saying that over and over and over. I was just like, I have worked so hard. And I'm at this point in my life and like, this is it. This is going to be how my life ends. Just like in bed, like feeling terrible or feeling nothing or whatever. So I think it varies depending on how severe it is.
Yeah. I think I don't necessarily beat myself up over it anymore, but one of my sort of stumbling places is another thing that Margaret talked about, which is asking for help and how hard it can be. And so I had a rough last couple of weeks, and I had to tell some of my colleagues, they would say, hey, you didn't fill this out correctly, or hey, you said you'd get that done, where's it at? Or these sorts of things. And I just had to tell people, like, I'm off my game.
Yep.
I'm off my game. Figuring out what to say is also hard. I kind of wish I could have blamed spring allergies or something like that. But just like, this isn't my finest.
Yeah. And we're allowed to not be at our finest.
Absolutely. But I think that admitting that you're not at your finest, to me, is a step on the way to asking for help.
Agreed.
And sometimes asking for help is asking for grace, which is, hey, can you not hound me for this? I promise I'll get to it as soon as I have the ability to. Or I understand that feels really urgent to you, but there's stuff happening in my personal life that's really urgent.
Yeah, more urgent.
So,
to me.
More urgent. Is it okay if we push back that deadline or whatever the case may be?
That'd be great to say.
So one of the things that maybe I'll get as my next tattoo that she said is that asking for help is a sign of determination. And I really want to start believing that, because I do believe that when other people ask me for help, that it is a determination, and I can see the courage it takes, and I can see the strength that it takes, and I can see the hope in some ways that it contains. But man, I still don't want to ask for it myself. So thank you again, Dr. Margaret, for reminding us of some of these things and for sharing your wisdom with us, because some of us really needed to hear it.
Agreed. Thank you. And we will be linking to Dr. Margaret Rutherford's TED Talk on perfectly hidden depression. She has also written a book and a workbook by that same title. And she has a podcast of her own, which is the Self-Work Podcast, which we strongly recommend.
We really hope that this discussion helps give some language or context to your own depression, or ideas for how to support someone else in your life living with it. We invite you to check out the hundreds of episodes in our archive and to explore both the Resource Hub and treatment options on recovery.com. Depression is too dark a road to walk alone.
We'll be back next week.